I will try to take a practical approach on this today. But you start with just a brief introduction to Nagoya Protocol, since I don't really know like how many of you out there knows about it, work with it. But yeah, I will. The focus today will be like how to practically work with it and to kind of stay compliant. So just like a very short background, this comes originally from the Convention on Biological Diversity that sets out like 3 core principles, and one of the principles is this fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. I mean, this convention was agreed back in 1992, but at that time it was more or less just words, and was really not done in reality. So I would say like what Nagoya is trying to do is to put this like principle into action. And yeah, it's kind of good to have in mind when working with it where it comes from, and I would say this is kind of the main source. Yeah. So this is an international protocol that like gives countries the possibility to kind of decide over their own genetic resources within their own borders, and put access legislation for other countries to do research and development on the resources. And it's like the first thing that I felt very like difficult with the Nagoya Protocol was that what is a genetic resources? Because it's like in the description or in the Nagoya Protocol, it says like that like it can be all from spores, animals, plants, you name it. It's like biological material. So in my way of thinking of it, is like you can think of genetic resources like everything, more or less, not only the animals that you see on the pictures, but plants and also part of plants. I think the most practical approach to see this and like to define what is a genetic resource is like think of it as everything except the thing that is like explicitly written out in the regulation that this is not part of the Nagoya Protocol. For example, pathogens and things related to the human body. But like otherwise from that, mostly all materials is seen as a genetic resources when you're working with Nagoya Protocol. And like how it really works in practice is that it gives, as I said, like the possibility for countries to regulate their genetic resources, but there is no must. There are many countries, like Sweden, for example, that have chosen not to regulate the genetic resources within Sweden. So that means that researchers can access genetic resources within Sweden without getting any. There's no requirement of having any permits or access and benefit sharing, that kind of regulation. But this is a possibility, and some countries have chosen to kind of limit the access, and some have not. But what all parties must follow is that they need to monitor the use of biological material that they kind of collect from other countries, and they are responsible to make sure that these different access and benefit sharing rules are kind of respected and followed. And that is, of course, in the case for Sweden too. So that's why we have to follow it and have to be compliant. And like a common question that I get from the researchers at my university is that, okay, but how do this affect me? Is this not just a legislation on like national level between countries? And actually it does. affect researchers, and it may do in different ways. And I'm here giving like 3 examples in different ways that researchers may be affected in like specific research projects. As I mentioned, like every country must monitor the compliance of these rules, and in Sweden it is the Naturvårdsverket, the Environmental Protection Agency, that they may do a compliance check, and they have responsibility for the supervision. But also more and more, and that's maybe the most common way that I come in touch with kind of compliance demands are from the funding agencies. They are more and more aware of this, and they may call for a clarification, like, okay, how are these specific projects going to comply with the Nagoya Protocol rules? But also to mention is the journals and the publication. This can be a part of kind of the ethical review that you need to explain how this rules has been complied with. So I would say these 3 are the most common, where you kind of where like individual research project can be affected by these rules. So it's not just up there; it's actually affecting researchers in their daily work. And as I mentioned, like the funding agency, this is I mean, real papers that I've been faced with, where they kind of set out, and they are expecting us to, or the research project to explain and for us to show how we comply with these rules. And it may look like this. It can look a bit scary at the beginning, but yeah. So that was just like a brief, as I said, background to these rules, very short, but like I will not try to explain how I work with it in a like more practical way to actually comply with the Nagoya Protocol and be compliant. And kind of the core paragraph for this is the Article 4 in the EU ABS regulation, and that is the same for all EU. So this is not only for Swedish researchers. I would say it's all EU countries has to follow this, and it is that the users shall exercise due diligence. And like for me, there are like 2 things that is the first thing that I check here is like, okay, what is a user? And then we come into the question like, this Nagoya Protocol is only valid when you're using genetic resources, because genetic resources are sent over the world all the time. So you kind of have to define, are we actually going to use genetic resources in the project we're going to do? And that is a pretty tricky question. The Commission, EU Commission has like a guidance document only on that term. So I would say like many questions that I get from this, like initial question can be like, they know that they're going to pick up some material from another country, and they come to me and they ask, do we need to comply with the Nagoya Protocol? And I would say one of the most common reply I give to that is like, what are you going to do with the material? Because that can define whether you're inside or outside. Because if you're not using the genetic resources in a research and development, then you're outside, and I pretty easily can say you don't need to care about this rules at all. I have a picture only for this actually, where you see I put on kind of orange as an example. I mean, like those things are sent between countries every day, all the time, and an orange normally are sent here from another country to like consume, right? To eat it, and that is not using. Using is it must be connected to some kind of research and development, and Nagoya Protocol kind of falls back on the more like common definition of research and development. That's why I refer to the Frascati manual and Oxford dictionary. But I really like, you should be aware of that. That is like an important initial question to really define what are we going to do with the things that we are bringing in. Another example is like if you're only using it for a reference material on some other study that you're doing, but you want to compare with a foreign material, that's also not using. So put some effort and time there, because it may save you a lot of effort. It's pretty boring to find out when all the kind of maybe work has already been done to comply with Nagoya Protocol, and find out that, by the way, maybe we didn't have to follow it from the beginning, or we are like outside the scope of it. So yeah, and the other one that is like a core thing to follow is the exercise due diligence. And I would say that this is not that clear what that actually means. But I try to like think of it like you should really try to do your best possible effort to find out what are the rules in the country that we are bringing the genetic material from. And that is sometimes easier, sometimes a bit more difficult. But and I will very soon like show you how I would approach it. But yeah, it's not enough just to say we didn't find anything and then just ignore the rules. You kind of have to look into this, maybe ask other researchers that's working in the same country, and even more important, I would say, almost all the time you have some kind of collaboration with the country where you're getting the material from. You should definitely raise the question with them. That used to be a good tip because they normally are more familiar to navigate the rules in their own country than perhaps we are. Yeah, I mean, if I were going to like start from scratch with this, and I had no other way to find out like, okay, what's the rules in this specific country where we get the material from, I would start here. And this is the kind of platform for Nagoya Protocol. APSH, it stands for ABS Clearinghouse. So it's a kind of clearinghouse, and you see a map there with all the green countries are countries that is member of the Nagoya Protocol. And what you can do is that you can, I'll show the next picture. You can click on the country where you're going to get your material from. And I used like an example, Kenya, that I've been working with a couple of times. If you click on that country, and to the right there, you see there is like a contact information to the ABS national focal point. So probably there's an email address there. There is even telephone numbers. But another one that I like to highlight is the one that they call ABS procedure. And like, if you're lucky, you will get pretty like clear information on how to get the access permit, and also if you need an access permit, because as I mentioned in the beginning, not all countries regulate their genetic resources. For example, as I said, Sweden is also on this map. If you click on Sweden, you're probably going to see something like we don't have any access requirements, and then you're done. That's then you don't need to think about those things anymore, because you can, based on the information found here on this website, kind of have it as a proof that yeah, we dealt with Nagoya Protocol by confirming with the country that they don't have any access legislation, and that's it. All right, Kenya, they actually do have access legislation, so you kind of have to comply with it if you bring material from Kenya, and you may like face this. And Kenya is not an easy country, I would say. It's maybe one of the more challenging. But this is how it looks, and it's easy to kind of get lost or be very unsure how to handle it, even for people like me that been working with different countries. It's not easy. And as I mentioned, Nagoya Protocol and the system, it's hard. And I would say one of the most difficult thing is that there is no really streamlined way to do it. Like all countries have the right to do it their own way. So this is Kenya's procedure, but that doesn't mean that Ethiopia have the same one. So, but you have to dig into this, and it absolutely can be easier to do with your collaboration partner if you have one, because they maybe gone through this before and know how to handle. They maybe have the contacts established already with like important people or agencies or like departments of government or whatever. But yeah, this is how it can look. And almost always when there is an access legislation, you must set up some kind of contract. Normally that is an MTA, material transfer agreement. And you can even see that they refer to it here as a PIC and MAT process. PIC stands for prior informed consent. MAT, that is like mutual agreed terms. Normally, you put those like terms in an MTA agreement because the material has to transfer to, in our case, Sweden. So almost always there has to be some kind of agreement to transfer the material, and that is they normally call it MTA, material transfer agreement. This doesn't really differ that much from an ordinary contract, I would say, or an ordinary material transfer agreement. There are something that is specific, I would say, and that is one that I list here, number 3, terms on benefit sharing, because benefit sharing, as you know by now, that is kind of the main principle of the whole system. So normally you what you put in a material transfer agreement is normally like, of course, what genetic resources to access, because they never give you permission to access everything. They used to be very like specific. Okay, what genetic resources are you interested in, and what kind of research are you going to do? They used to be interested if it's a commercial research or if it is a non-commercial research. And why they are interested in that is like because they tend to be a bit more like harsh on the commercial one, and they perhaps also like to take part of future profits as a benefit sharing, while non-commercial research that is commonly done at universities, benefit sharings in those cases used to be more like maybe a share of that you have to share the results, and maybe a collaboration, local collaboration, that kind of thing. So I would show some example for how it can look. But another thing for them is this third-party use. They don't normally want you to okay, you bring the material to Sweden, and then when you're done with it, you give it over to a colleague or someone else, and they do something and then gives it over and over. I mean, the longer chain it gets, the harder for them is to kind of keep track of the material and like, oh, what happened? I mean, it can be like we get the material to Sweden for a non-commercial project, but then we give the material away to someone else that turns it into some business. And there's like, and if there is no like connection between the one making profits from it and the country, then like, what's the point? But this is a huge challenge for the countries that is having this access legislation. Like, how do they actually know what's going to happen with the material when they kind of when it's outside the country? It's a lot about trust in that sense. It's very hard for them to find out. So yeah, trust building, I would say, is very important within this system. Yeah, as I said, I put some like examples of benefit sharing that I've been using in like real contracts. It's like it's not a confidential information or anything, but yeah, it can be like we involve local researchers and do like publication together, maybe some training sessions, that kind of things. And normally they're fine with it. It doesn't have to cost money. Many like researchers, they have a like tight budget, no money to pay to get the resources, but that's normally not the thing that you need to do. It's not an upfront payment. It's more like, yeah, it looks like this. Yeah, I mean, I understand for especially people not working with contracts all the time like I do. It's easy and makes things smoother if you can come up with some templates and model contracts. There are some out there already online, so you can look on that. You can also, of course, talk with colleagues or other universities perhaps that can like share this kind of material transfer agreement just to save time. And yeah, and then like, what's the goal? And this is it. This like you want to get a permit, and it can look like this. I guess give some example here, or a conclusion that you can be sure to say like, oh, but there is no need for a permit from the country where the genetic resources come from, like Sweden. And in both ways, you show this due diligence that I mentioned earlier. And you stay compliant. So yeah, this is like how you work with it. I like this, like the principle of like comply or explain works pretty good within this area, and that means like, okay, either way you comply, or if you don't comply, you have to be like prepared to explain why you don't comply. And an explanation for that can be like, yeah, but according like we are outside the scope of Nagoya Protocol because we are not using these resources that we are bringing from this country. We are having it just as a reference material, for example. I think sometimes I get like step-by-step question how do you really work with it? And I made this. I don't know how clear it is, to be honest, but this is like how I would approach it. Also be aware of that, as you saw on the map, not all countries are part of Nagoya Protocol, but they may still have some kind of their own access and benefit sharing rules that they kind of expect you to follow. So as a common rule, like always get some kind of try to find out the local rules in the country that you're working with. I know that's not so easy. It's not even in English all the time, but a good start could be that you talk with a collaboration partner if they are aware of any restrictions when it comes to transferring the material.